Morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, July 21st, 2022. This is the Podman Community Cabal meeting. If you have not yet signed up, please do so within the agenda. I've posted a link in the notes section of the chat, or in the chat section. We've got two topics and then a possible third topic. The first topic is going to be about man page cleanup by Ed Santiago leading that. And then the Podman Desktop team, Stefan Lemur and Florent Benoit, and will apologize in advance for messing up your names or mispronouncing them. We'll be talking about that. And then we have some possible topics that Dan Walsh had suggested over the OCI runtime, WASM, for example, and then also Podman support for ZSTD and gzip format at the same time. So given all that, I am going to be taking notes within the agenda list. If I write anything that's off base, please go ahead and correct me. Or if you have links or want to make some additions, I'm very happy to have those added there, and they will be compiled and posted in the next day or two. So that's all that. I am going to turn it over to Ed to start up the discussions.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not prepared. Just swamped. The gist of the issue is there's a lot of horrible, evil duplication in the man pages, lots of flags that are documented in one page and then almost identically documented in another. And since those have to be, of course, maintained in parallel over time, they drift. There's a PR, I've got a PR open that adds a poor man's include mechanism to .md. There's been some follow-up discussion about using RST instead of MD. I've looked at RST. I haven't really liked what I've seen so far. There are tools for converting MD to RST, and we can batch that. There's a lot of errors, unfortunately. They're not perfect, so there would have to be a lot of massaging of the RSTs. And then there are tools that convert RST to whatever readthedocs.io does and to man pages. I have not done due diligence in affirming that man pages converted to RST and that MDs to RST to man pages produces equivalent output to what we have right now. I'm throwing this out as a help, please. Should we do the very simple 3 sed lines include? Is anybody motivated enough to spend several weeks converting to RST, or are there other options? Thank you.
So what about just, so one of the issues here is that we have, you're basically using a CPU processor right now to assemble the MD files. If we had the MD files checked into the repository with basically a comment saying don't edit this, would that allow us to go forward with this without having to do a good job to convert to RST?
You broke up a little. I'm going to repeat your question to make sure I understood it correctly. You're asking if it's the current process, as I've got it, is to rename a handful, a very small number of .md files to .md.in. And then can you mute, please? You've got a little background noise.
That's me, sorry.
Okay. So you're asking if, in addition to committing the renamed .md.in.input files, we could also check in the generated .md files with large glowing neon comments saying do not edit this. So we would have generated files in the repo. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, it's similar to what we do with bindings, where we basically check in the bindings into the repo and then tell people don't edit the bindings. And we can build checks to make sure that you can't commit changes directly to the MD files. They have to be checked into the MD.ins files.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm totally okay with that. I think there will be growing pains. I think it will be annoying for devs who will see an immediate failure in CI because they changed the .in file or they changed the .md file and things that match. But that seems a little, actually, that seems a lot less horrible to me than the current state of duplication.
I don't understand why we need to commit them. Like,
I think it's because of Podman.io or readthedocs.io, but I haven't looked into that enough to understand what the problem there is.
I mean, if it's just a make target, it should be possible to call it in their build infra somehow. You know, there's a Python script somewhere that's executed. I'm sure you can somehow make it execute your make target. So
Yeah, build the docs could run a command before building the docs, and that would solve the problem.
So, okay, so that might be on me. I have not done due diligence. I have not looked at read the docs to understand its process. But I have to guess that it does a git checkout and can then be told to run a make or some input script before that can do the magic conversion. So if I will look into that, unless somebody here knows the answer. Raise your hand if you do. But if we can assume that we can do that, we do not have to check in the generated files and we can just go with the .in files. Are there any other problems that people are seeing with the .in file approach?
I mean, the only other downside would be that you can't go to GitHub and just click on the main page. So it would be also we would lose that from github.com/podman. But I don't know how many people will actually do that. I know I use it that way, but I'm not sure other people.
I don't have an answer for that. I'm sorry.
But that being said, I wouldn't block it on that problem. Sometimes when I'm developing a man page, I look how it's rendered on GitHub to make sure it looks good in Markdown as well as a man page.
Yeah, I do that quite frequently. I know a couple other people that do, but I don't know if that's mostly developers on the project that deal with that versus people who are using the product.
but if we have docs.podman.io, you can always go there for the latest stuff as well. So
Yes.
But not in a PR. I get it.
There has to be some sort of tool for compiling it into a reviewable format. I mean, we need some sort of way to compile it into the man pages already. I think having some sort of tool to compile it into Markdown for previewing would not be that difficult on top of that.
It is rendered into Markdown. It is in your repo because that's how we generate the docs. You do a make docs, and of course the preprocessor filters it all and generates .md files, which are then rendered into mrof man files. But the missing step there is that since the .md and the .1 files are not get committed as part of the PR, they will not be seen using the GitHub UI. So you can use Pandoc or you can use any of the command line tools to render it into HTML or whatever, but it will not be GitHub flavored Markdown, because GitHub has its own quirks, and I think I get that. And again, I don't have an answer.
Okay. I was going with this a different way. I have a Emacs plugin that does Markdown preview, so I was assuming that that wasn't a problem. But yeah, I see what you're saying.
So I would say let's go forward with the change and then see if people complain. I think Tom and I probably, a few community members probably do more man page work than anybody else, and cutting and pasting it into 3 or 4 different man pages every time we make a change is a pain in the butt.
Okay, I'll keep working on it. I'll work on it next week. Thanks for the insights and the questions. I will keep all of those in mind. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Ed, and everyone else that's contributed there. So next up, we have the Podman Desktop update. I'm not sure if it's Stefan or Florent who are going to take over.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And we just wanted to give a small update on the progress we are making on Podman Desktop. Maybe a few of you are not fully aware of the initiative. So this is a good opportunity to speak a little bit about the tool and maybe get more eyes on it. So if you test it, feel free to report any kind of issues. I'm just going to share my screen so I can show you the latest features that we built. So waiting should be fine. So one of the things that we have been working on is an onboarding sequence, so that when you first start Podman Desktop, if your Podman machine is not yet initialized or is not running, then you have a handy way to get started on this. So here I'm just going to start my machine. And once it will be start, I will see all my my images and my containers. So it should not take too long, I think. Yeah, here it is. So I have my list of images that I can interact with, also my containers. So what we changed is that we had a consistent header for the list of containers and the list of images. So now, if you want to search, you can search into the list. We have also been working on the support for proxy. So now you can directly configure your proxy information directly from the preferences of Podman Desktop. We also work on adding the support for registries. So let me actually try to connect to my account on Docker Hub. So the registry, and now you can see that if you have built a container directly from Podman and locally, you can push the image to the registry. You can also interact with the registry and pull private images as well if you need that. We also add a small help page which allows you to quickly access to the documentation or report bugs, and we have a links to our chat system to discuss with us in case you have some questions. So that's for the latest capabilities that we've been adding. Any questions?
Does the proxy setting, if I have the proxy environmental variable set on my Mac or the Windows box, will they automatically show up in the preferences in that box, or do I have to re-enter them?
Yeah,
Now you have to enter them again.
Okay. So that'd be an enhancement I'd ask for.
yeah.
And for Windows, we are waiting for Podman 4.2 because proxy was not working on Windows.
Yeah.
And
So
there's
I guess my other question is, when am I going to get pods?
It's coming. So we are planning to start looking at how we can group containers from a UI point of view. So when we will have that, then we will be able to bring the capability to run the pods directly. Yeah, but it's coming. It's been asked.
There's also a huge change where you would need to implement all the fields that are in a create command or in a run command. So anybody that wants to contribute, that would be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. There is one more thing that I wanted to show is that we are running a early adopter program as well. So basically, we are asking few users to join the program so that we can work with them to identify what are their asks, what are their pain points when they are working with containers, and trying to also work with them on improving the UI and the UX of the tool. So if you are interested by collaborating with us on this front, feel free to join the early adopter program. There is a banner at the top of the website, and it redirects to a quick form, which is just asking some basic information. So that will be helpful if you are interested.
And just for clarification there, you're not necessarily looking for developers for the desktop, but even just feedback from
Users, yeah.
Yes.
People who are willing to give a early look at the tool, testing it, or maybe reporting some cases or some specific configuration options, especially on Windows, and things like that. That will be really helpful for hardening the tool and helping troubleshoot as well. And if you are supportive of the projects and the product as well, feel free to start the repository. It's always helpful. So
yeah, you wouldn't mind if I threw something up on the podman.io Twitter handle, would you?
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Ready? Anything further or any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to move to the open discussion section. And we did have a couple of topics. Dan, I don't know if you wanted to run with the OCI runtimes or the ZSTD and gzip, or call on somebody to do so.
Yeah, if Adi or Giuseppe want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Giuseppe, do you want to talk about this?
Maybe you can talk about what you did with Wasm time in the latest Syrian release 1.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So yeah, so I don't have anything to share the screen here yet, but I'm just sharing a link which is of the latest Syrian release, which was made yesterday. So so a couple of users have been already playing with the new integration which we did with Syrian, which allows end users to run WebAssembly workload. And from the early users, we got a feedback that since the WASM Edge got upgraded to a newer API version, it doesn't work for the new version because like we were compatible with the version 0.9.1. So as a result, in the new update, we decided to drop support for the older version of WASM Edge, and we'll be only supporting the newer version, which is 0.1, 0.1 onwards. And we also decided to drop the experimental WASM Edge process support, which is not going to be supported in crun from now onwards. And a new backend has been added to be able to delegate workload to WASM time, because like there are similar tools in the same space. So for the early users who are willing to try this out and who are the users of Crustlet or some other tools, they can use WASM time now, and hopefully this will become a default runtime in future, default delegation runtime in future for crun. So this feature is not yet shipped by default on Fedora and Podman, but most of the early users are like manually pulling in the source and compiling crun by themselves. So it's like free to try it out right now, and we are looking for some users who are willing to play with it. But hopefully soon we're gonna push this as a default feature in Fedora. So gonna be shipping this with Podman as well. Yeah, so that is the whole update with the WebAssembly integration, which is there right now. So let us know if you guys want to play out with the feature, and we're open to feedback. Yeah, so that was the update from my side. Dan, do you want to discuss anything else on this topic?
Well, I mean, the basic idea, we've been kicking around for a while is to allow us to enhance the OCI runtimes, through crun to basically bring functionality that's required. So right now, if you wanted to run a WASM workload, you'd have to embed it into your image. And with this, now you can just have your WASM code and don't have to actually use the WASM engine. Talk potentially about doing this with Java or other languages, JREs, JavaScript, and potentially even with Wine. So just an idea that we've been kicking around, and I wanted to know if anybody else had any thoughts on this.
So one, like the leverage point is like, so like it will still use the under the hood, it will still use a WebAssembly runtime, but the leverage which users will get is to not break their existing infrastructure. Like if they have existing infrastructure of the OCI runtime, so they don't have to change the shim or the runtime in itself to run the WebAssembly workload if they opt in to use the new feature of crun. But there is always the other route where they can just change the shim and the runtime itself. So this is just an alternate approach in order to make the adoption simpler and migration simpler for the new workloads. Yeah, that's pretty much on my side.
Yeah. So in Fedora, so the next version of crun with Fedora will have a sub package that will do this automatically. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Well, for now it's not enabled in Fedora. For Fedora now, on the same theme of enhancing the OCI runtime, the 1.5 will have support for crun for running containers with the crun. So it's lightweight virtual machines, for if you're not familiar with that.
Okay, so we haven't basically implemented the WASM stuff's implemented upstream, but it's not easily available to anybody who wants to play with it on Fedora.
Yeah, there is a discussion going on because we need to add the packages to Fedora for the WASM runtime. For the serial point of view, it's just a build flag. There is not much to do to enable it. Just to add the dependency to RPM and change the way we configure script.
But does crun right now do the agv0 switch, so that if I created a file called WASM, and link to it, it would do the right thing.
Yeah.
Whatever.
For Wasm, I'm not sure. For Kran, yes.
Yeah.
For Kran, like it's already there. For Wasm, like it's not there in the upstream yet, but it's a small tweak.
Okay. So if
Is
you
there-
install, it's in the packages for crun, is crun-krun, the sub package. I'll look for it, but
Yeah.
so people could stop playing with krun. For those that don't know, krun is similar to Kata containers, in that you will get full KVM separation on it, but it's a little lighter weight than Kata, and is missing some features of Kata, but has we think plugs into the system better. So you should be able to just do a Podman Desktop runtime equals krun. If you have this package installed, then you'll run whatever container is inside of the krun KVM virtual machine, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Dan, but by the way, krun is not a sub-package, but the crun package will provide krun. So it's a meta provides.
Okay, but doesn't that
And so far, it's only on Rawhide. It has not been included on the release versions.
okay? Does it require krun has will it require the krun package then?
Sorry, say that again. Who will require krun?
Will it does it require the live krun package then? Does crun require live krun, or do we just fail if?
I think it does. I'll look into it and get back to you.
Yeah, so we might want to make it a sub package so that we can do the proper requires stuff. We don't want crun requiring live krun.
Oh, okay. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm envisioning this stuff is that we'd have a whole bunch of sub packages of crun that would have, krun and whatever we call the Wasm one, and others that we end up developing them, and then they will pull in the proper operation.
Yeah. Well, in theory, we could add this in future, like if we dynamic load.
You went on mute, Giuseppe.
Can you hear me now? I would think now that they are compiled as part of crun itself, so the sub package would just install the same link. Maybe in future, well, we have the support upstream for loading the handler from a shared object, but we are not doing that yet.
Yeah, I was thinking it would just install the link file and then and then have the requires to pull in the proper libraries.
Okay. Okay, that we could do. Yeah, it's just a packaging problem.
Is there a place I can add to the notes with a pointer to where people can get further information on how all this works or how they could use it?
Yeah, there's a docs page on crun. Let me share that. Just a second. I just pasted that in the talks in the G chat.
Thank you. Right, do we have any further topics for today? Questions, suggestions? Need to get done.
So Giuseppe, you want to talk about the pushing both images on Podman push so that we could start to submit to the STD?
Yeah, because so the background is that we have some support for pulling partial images. So when some files are already present locally, we will just pull the missing files instead of the entire lake. But this feature now in container storage, it's implemented using a different compression format, say standard, and a different image format. Well, our container tools already supported the standard since many years. I think every tool we released in the last 5 years support that, well, 4 or 5 years. But there is still a problem with the Docker, which has support for the standard only upstream, and it didn't hit a release yet. Well, I hope, from what I saw upstream, that a new release will happen in next month or so. But if we move to the standard, well, it will break all the Docker installation. Well, when I started to work on this, like I was hoping that this Docker feature would hit users faster, but well, it still didn't happen. So if you want to move forward, well, Valentin, we're discussing this with Valentin and Miloslav. Maybe a possible solution is to push the images to the registry in both formats for some time until the standard is support more widely. So the basic idea is to offer users a way to specify a list of compression formats to use for pushing the images. Yeah, the default will be what we do now, gzip, but this could be tweaked also to specify additional formats. In our case, would be gzip plus the standard chunk format. Yeah. Well, this would be double expensive on pushing images, because you will need to push the same layer twice, but it's a temporary thing, a temporary solution until we can move fully to the standard, which I think is gonna happen anyway, because it's just better than gzip. So it's just when. Yeah. So
do you see this as being something we put into containers.conf to specify which compression algorithm you're going to push when pushing, or which compression algorithms you would use to push?
Yeah, from a user perspective, yes, it should be something in containers conf that allows to specify a list of formats. So the default setting will be just a list with one element, but it's gzip, and have the possibility for users to add more change. Well, with this mechanism, they can just specify the standard if they are brave to use just any format. Yeah, instead from how this is stored in the registry, it's still not clear. Valentin, I think, had a suggestion for that. Valentin, want to, yeah, to clarify what was your idea for fixing this issue on the registry, like so that existing clients will keep working.
Yeah, when selecting an image from instance from a manifest list or OCI index, all clients that I know just pick the first matching one, because they don't traverse everything. In theory, you know, there can be nested manifest lists, so clients usually just do the first one, at least the ones that I know. Containerd does it, Docker does it, and for sure Podman, Scopio, Builder, Podman, Cryo, all of them do it. So existing clients would continue, you know, to work. Older ones who need the gzip one, when the gzip image is listed first in the list, so we just need to put it after. So the C standard one just need to be put after, and we have to update the containers image or our code to be aware of that issue. So if we want to prefer the C standard one, we have to traverse the entire list and then make a choice. So this is pretty much the idea that we were discussing so far. It's a common way of pulling or selecting images in HPC, because in HPC there's similar issues with providing multiple flavors of the same image, because they tailor or optimize the applications that they want to run for, specific CPUs. So, different versions of different, let's say, Intel or AMD processors, they will compile their tools with specific compiler flags so they just get the best out of the hardware they run on, which is similar. They have pretty much the same workload or the same image, just for different flavors depending on how the host looks like. So this would be a nice way to remain backwards compatible. So the first image in the list will still be the gzip one, while still allowing for the new shiny world of C standard by the tools just being slightly smarter and traversing the entire list. I don't expect there to be any cost, because manifest lists are not long, and iterating over a list is cheap in comparison to downloading layers and things like that. So I think that the benefits we would gain are acceptable, or the costs that it would entail are acceptable given the benefits.
So theoretically, in Podman 4.3, then when I push an image, I'd be pushing both gzip format and STD format, and they'd be sorted in such a way that older container engines would continue to get the gzip format by default. The newer version of Podman would prefer the STD image if it exists, otherwise it will use the gzip image. And then at some point in the future, when Docker and Containerd catch up with us, then we can stop pushing the gzip formats by default.
That is correct.
If a user knows that he's only going to use the new tooling, then they can eliminate the pushing of the gzip format. They know that their image is never going to be used by older tooling, and they can always just push the STD format. That seems like a reasonable solution to this problem, and allow us to move forward.
Yeah, thanks for the nice summary, Dan. This is exactly how it would work. So new clients would benefit from C standard, older ones would not break, continue using gzip. We need to figure out the details. So by looking at the manifest list, we have no idea, which layers are being used. So, for this, we really had to consult the manifest of an individual single image, which would be extremely costly if we had to ping all images. So, we need to probably come up with some convention. So, for instance, via annotations. So, manifest lists support annotations for each entry in this list. So, we could, for instance, add an annotation there. This is something commonly used in HPC, where there would be one annotation that indicates, this is a C standard image. No idea yet how the naming looks like. This tends to be the hardest thing in engineering, finding the right name. But conceptually, it can work like that.
Do we have a design doc? Do we have a design document? Go ahead, Dan. I give.
I think the answer is no, we don't, but we should be able to write one up now. But once we have a prototype of this, then we'd have to open it up to the OCI and make sure that other toolings know about this, what we're planning here, and so that they can respond. And perhaps we could even open up a pull request to upstream Docker and Containerd to follow the new standard.
That's a great idea. I think opening PRs for Containerd and Docker is a nice approach. Regarding the OCI, I think it's worth talking to the community. But so for selecting an image from a manifest list, this is how this should work is not defined in the spec. I assume, to leave it open for exactly these use cases because, this not specifying how the selection should work, opens up or gives the freedom for exactly these use cases. So we may not be able to change the spec, but talking to the community is certainly important.
Did I hear a volunteer to write a design doc for this that we could maybe put out in the discussions or somewhere else appropriate?
I volunteered Giuseppe and Valentin to write that document.
Noted.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
I only heard Dan say I volunteer, and then he cut out, didn't he?
I can't use your new laptop for that, Valentin. Very nicely tried, though. All right. Anything further on this or anything else? Preeti just noted that really wasn't volunteer, but voluntold. And so true. It's the Red Hat way. Okay, well, unless I hear something else real quick, I'm just going to put up a quick reminder for the next meetings. Our next Cabal meeting is on Thursday, August 18th. And again, the Cabal meetings are generally for design discussion stuff like we did today. And our next community meeting, which is more for demos and updates on what's happening for versions that are upcoming, is on Tuesday, August 2nd. So that's just right around the corner. And that too will be at 11 a.m. on that Tuesday. So unless there's any last gasp, I'm going to say thank you for this, folks, and we'll be hanging up.